What's up, fellas?
Howdy.
Good evening. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you
How
too.
are you?
Oh man, is it cooler up there, or is it still real hot up there? It's cooled off a little bit down here.
It's supposed to be 48 is a low tonight up here.
In other words, it's cooling.
About the same here. It's you head out to the farm or to go work the bees, and it's long sleeves and flannels. And then as soon as the sun gets out and it's really getting going about 9:30, 10, it starts to kind of warm back up. But definitely puts you in mind of not just fall beekeeping, but it puts a little fire under your feet to get moving. Make sure everything's heading in the right direction for getting your bees ready for winter. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Down here, it's not that cool, but it has, we've had highs like in the 80s instead of in the 90s. And it's just been really almost like a little bit of there's something different about even the way it looks with the sun in the evening time. It's just something a little different feeling there, a little bit of a breeze, a little bit of a cooler breeze. And it's just been real nice. And so it's been kind of cool. Yeah, we're enjoying it. I think we got some more hot weather coming, but for right now, a little bit of a fool's fall. Yeah. We'll take it. We'll take it for sure. Well, as you know in the title, we're Laryssa from Beekeeping Made Simple is supposed to come on tonight. She does have small children, so hopefully she'll be able to join us soon. Either way, we'll be fine. But I look forward to talking to her this evening. Hopefully she'll be able to make it in.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we start off with you, Brian? Tell us what's going on up there. I understand you had some angry bees not too long ago.
Well, pretty much the consensus is everyone said that you sent all of your mean bees up here to Ohio. So, if you can return, I've noticed in your videos how calm and mellow that yours are. If you could return mine and I'll send mine back down to you, the experiment is done. No, they just, they get that way. It's fine. I put on the thicker gloves. I make sure that, the pants, the jeans are tucked in and everything like that, and you work them. But, the colony size, there's only one colony over there that I have that just concerns me as far as the size. And it's this one swarm catch that I had. But, thinking, I don't know how old the queen is. She's not laying that hot. So probably what I'm going to end up doing when I get over is I'm going to check and see if there's any improvement. If not, I'm just going to combine over. I've got that resource colony. I'm just going to shift over a colony over there. I'll pinch that queen out and just combine stuff up. That way, I'd rather have one solid colony versus trying to struggle with one. It's just, I'm done with that. But things look good. Overall, Brian, Lissa, and Africanized, we don't have those that far up here, Brian. We were in and just a little bit of context here, we hit such a nasty dearth up in my area that there's other areas, like even areas south of me, that this really doesn't happen. There's areas south from where I'm at that have goldenrod in full bloom, and it's not in bloom here yet. So we hit such a dearth. I fed in the last month, I probably fed 2 times more than what I ever have before. So, and they were just, they're hangry. They're simmering down a little bit though. The last full inspection that I went through, the colonies were doing a little better. As far as temperament, I was able to go through basically all of them. So other than my hex hive, now I had planned on, with work, I was finishing up a hair early today, and I was going to go over and film an entire deep dive going through that hex hive just to show how they've built it out, how it looks, everything. And we only got up to a high of like 68 degrees. And I did not want to tear all of those boxes apart and end up risking any brood getting chilled. And it's funny that I had planned that today because Luke, who is the creator, the founder of Hex Hives, he just texted me today asking if I was having a video, going to be published here soon. And I told him, I said, well, I had planned on filming today, but just didn't get to. But, overall, I'm pretty content. Last year at this time, as a lot of people did, they had issues with queens, with colonies, things like that. For this being a rebuilding year, I cannot complain at all, because I'm sitting, even if I do that combined, I'll be sitting at 18 colonies. So, it's all good. It's all good. So I'm content, Bruce.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We have our guest here, Laryssa. Welcome to the stream team tonight. Glad to have you.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Howdy.
Good. We're just kind of going around the horn right now. We're gonna hear how Greg's doing here, and then we'll see how things are going in your neck of the woods and introduce you a little bit.
Okay.
So Greg, how are things going up there in I guess Eastern Ohio, Southeastern Ohio?
It's headed towards winter, whether you like it or not. Same thing as Brian. Most folks in the Midwest or the eastern part of the Midwest are waking up to those beautiful, cool mornings where you got to grab a hoodie or a long sleeve to head out to the farm and get all those things done. You close your eyes in the evening or the morning and you can hear just all the wildlife and the insects. You can close your eyes and it's fall. So just the way things sound, the way things smell, the way things feel, it's coming whether you're ready or not. So we're just in a mode where we're just chugging forward, making sure everything's in at least double deeps, trying to get the final. There's a certain segment of our yard, of one of our out yards, I just can't seem to get those downsized, to get those split out for wintertime. So we're trying to make our way and to get all those final things wrapped up. And then the name of the game is just make sure everyone has feed, make sure everyone is healthy, make sure their mite washes are low, get the appropriate treatments on if necessary, and just start bulking them up if they need it for the wintertime. The difference between, I think, Brian's area and our area is the goldenrod's been in bloom, at least the first round, for a couple weeks now. I am starting to see a little bit of a tailing off, though, of the nectar that was coming in. So colonies that we had kind of earmarked for honey production that kind of built up and didn't have their supers ready for harvest, those have grown into those sizes and they're totally fine. It's those colonies that were 7 and 8 frames into a single, or they were just trying to get into a double that didn't get enough of those food resources. Those are the ones that are they're kind of at a stalemate until we get enough feed on them. So the name of the game for us is make sure we keep feed on everybody who needs it. We have some colonies who there was just enough nectar coming in where they were drawing comb even this late in the year. So we're trying to take advantage of all that, get everything moved forward, always be in the mindset of forward momentum, and just know that before too much longer, it's going to be time to start making some really tough calls, doing some downsizing splits, doing some equalizing, getting everything kind of ready for winter. But that's kind of where we're at. It seems like every week is pretty similar. This last month, it's just keep moving forward is the name of the game. Cool mornings, cool nights. That can lead to some bees who aren't exactly excited to see you, but here we are. So looking forward to hopefully some solid nectar flow. But as it's said in Ohio, you just can't count on a goldenrod flow. So keeping that in the back of our mind too. So forward momentum is the name of the game here, Bruce.
You watch those words there, Greg, because do not curse goldenrod.
Laryssa, welcome to the stream team beekeeping chat this evening. We're glad to have you here as our special guest. I first met Laryssa probably 2 or 3 years ago. Laryssa, I was watching a video, and the name of the video was "How to Read a Frame," I believe, and it had tons of views. And back then, both of our channels were quite a bit smaller. Laryssa, your channel was, I invited you on and we had an interview, and your channel has grown much faster than mine since then. So I just was looking at your channel the other day and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're up around 58,000, something like that, 57, 58,000 last I checked, or something like that. So welcome aboard this evening. And one thing I want to just give some positive feedback to you. I really have been impressed with you when I talked to you that day. And then every video I've watched, or parts of videos, whatever I watched of your videos, there's always such a heart of a teacher. You do it in such a straightforward, simple, and humble way, and I think people really appreciate that. Tonight already, I think we've had more people, saying, "Hey, Laryssa, I'm one of your students, Laryssa," things like that, just in the chat. So
Zach.
you're a
In one of your videos, do you buy queens from Zach?
yes, I do. I sure do. I've started doing that the last couple of years.
I tried one of his queens, but we actually lived on the same street.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Wow.
Before I moved, I really wanted to shoot a video like shadowing him at his yards, but it would have required me like, the big island, there's not like really roads always. When you give directions, or like the third telephone pole that has that purple thingy on it, that's where you turn. And Google Maps doesn't really work always. So it was like I had to go to his house and spend all day going down with him. So we never made it happen. But
well, take a few minutes and kind of tell us your beekeeping story. Tell us, you have made a move back to the States. I'm not sure really exactly where you're at, but maybe just talk a little bit about your journey. Take a few minutes, and then we'll start hitting you with some questions.
Take a right at the mango tree, Zach says.
Absolutely,
that was what we told the UPS driver. We would put it in the instructions whenever we had a package mailed to us. Yeah, I am now in the continental US. We moved to Pennsylvania exactly 1 year ago, a couple weeks ago. I will say we were just in Maine August 1st. We saw goldenrod, but I did not see goldenrod in Pennsylvania here. We're in southeastern Pennsylvania, so a lot colder than like the Pittsburgh area and stuff. I started to see that like 2 weeks ago. It's kind of funny. It's like we saw it like coming down the coast as we were driving, and on the way home, we started to see it in Massachusetts, and now it's in PA. So I started beekeeping in Philly, and then I did terribly, and it didn't go well. So I moved to Hawaii and took a job working for an apiary, and ended up staying there for a decade. Worked for a small farm, as like an intern, but then ended up working for Big Island Bees, which has like 3,000 hives. They do organic honey. That's what they're known for. I know a lot of people argue about whether organic honey exists, but it's certified not by the USDA. But out in the Big Island, there's so many lava fields, it's possible to actually have like a good solid radius where people aren't spraying and stuff. So I worked for them, but did a lot of education for them, worked in there doing tours and stuff, and started working for myself, started building my own apiary while working for them, because it's kind of boring, when someone's always telling you what to do. You always want to experiment as a beekeeper. I feel like true beekeepers are never happy with just doing what they're supposed to. A lot of the beekeepers there, they're just like, they know very little about bees, or seem to, curious about them. So I wanted to try things on my own. So I started my own apiary and selling honey. But now I guess I kind of consider myself a sideliner, even though I have 4 hives, because I'm really just trying to make an income as a beekeeper. I have 2 little kids, so I am like a stay-at-home mom part-time. My husband works part-time, and I use beekeeping as my primary source, my only source of income, really. I am the primary person in the house actually bringing in income. It's just I've moved on from my honey sales to education. I couldn't really run so many hives with my kids, so I started to do a little bit more working from home and teaching people. I was definitely hesitant to do the YouTube because it's very intimidating. Even talking to you guys, it's like, I don't like, what do I know about bees? But yeah, I made like that how to read a frame video, and I made it a long time ago, and it took me like 4 months to edit it. I was pregnant, and I just did it here and there, and it was taking forever. It was rainy. It was terrible. I had to find all of these little bits and pieces of what I was trying to explain from other videos I had shot over the course of the last like 7 years as a beekeeper, just to fill in the gaps. But like my daughter was born and all of a sudden she's 6 months old, and I go to YouTube and I was like, oh, look, 100,000 people watched this video. Huh. That was nice. And so that's when I decided to just maybe being a YouTube, like having a YouTube presence wasn't about knowing everything, but just trying to help people understand some of the fundamentals a little bit better. I feel like when you learn about beekeeping, there's a lot of gaps in the teaching. You know, maybe partially because everyone does it a little bit differently, and partially because you have to do it a little bit differently every year, depending on what you see. But it's just like sometimes really hard to know like what exactly. Sometimes people are just like, just tell me what to do. And it can be hard to really find those instructions. So that's really what I'm doing now. Is now I'm in PA, and we'll see how the bees do with my first cold winter in over a decade. You know, I'm like starting with, I didn't harvest any honey this year. I am just seeing what's going on in the environment. It's, I just started giving my bees some feed. I lost one of my hives. They swarmed off. Like I was not prepared for the bees in Hawaii. It's like they know that no winter is coming, and they're pretty much Italian bees. And so I got a package of bees from a guy. They got them from Tennessee, I believe. And they're very much the typical Italian bees that you would buy from a commercial apiary. But I got 2 nukes from just a local guy in the club that lived 2 miles away. And those bees are so different than bees I have handled in Hawaii. And so everything is very different for me this year. They're very aggressive. They do not like me. They don't want me there. They don't want me going near them. The one hive swarmed. The other one I split just in time. But they're doing well. They're very strong. So I'm okay with them. I put up with them, and they put up with me, and we'll see how it goes. It's very different from the Hawaii bees, that's for sure.
I wonder how far you are from Brian and Greg. I know Brian's been having some issues with his bees that are typically real gentle, and they've been a little crazy the last month or two also.
Yeah.
How far are you close to Philly, or you're?
Yeah, I'm 50 miles west of Philly.
How far is that from you guys?
Okay. 6 hours or so, probably for me.
Okay.
Yeah,
Straight east.
it'd probably be 4.5 hours for me. I think maybe a little bit more. So where I'm at, if you draw a line from Cleveland to Pittsburgh, I'm right in the middle. So I'm around the Youngstown, Ohio area. I'm 15 or so miles away from the Pennsylvania line, maybe 20 miles away from the PA line. So very, very close. So I was actually just out that way last weekend. I was out on the eastern shore of Maryland, and drove the PA Turnpike back. So,
must have paid a fortune. I cannot believe how much the turnpike cost. It's ridiculous. Like, it cost me $18 to visit my parents in Philly every time I drive there.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And it costs less than that in tolls to go to Maine.
Yeah. There and back, it was almost $100 in tolls.
Yeah, Pennsylvania is expensive. I think it's almost expensive as expensive as Hawaii, honestly.
Yeah.
I had no idea. But yeah, Pennsylvania is huge. My husband's from New Hampshire, and he had no idea how big the state was. So yeah, it's definitely not anywhere near as cold as your winters.
Yeah, the attitude with the bees. There's times, and it's in videos, so it's not just me saying I do it. I would check my colonies in shorts. It's just, when it's in the middle of the summer and you're wearing all that stuff, it's hot. I'm naturally hot anyway, so I would wear shorts. And now with these jokers, there is no way. So about the last month I've seen, but like I said, we hit such a nasty dearth here in this area that the bees, their attitudes just stepped up. So, and they're simmering down a little bit. I'll see, like, when we start to get into a little bit of a flow, if their attitude stays where it's at, then I'm not going to make any move as far as any like queens this year. Just some context, like I got hit with colony loss, like a lot of people did. I started last year with 8 colonies and did splits, everything else, and ended up went into the winter with 8. Had so many issues, and then I came out of the winter beginning of this year with 3, and I've just built up, packages, splits, swarms, and I'm at 18 now, and they're all pretty good, other than one. But so I'll take attitude. If I have nice, healthy colonies, I'll take attitude, and then down the road, I'll work on the genetics and try and simmer down the yard some. But I just want the numbers. That way I'm built back up and I can play around a little bit more.
Yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world. There are definitely worse things to have in your genetic pool than but the videos of me in Hawaii, I'm in like a tank top, shorts, flip-flops, and just a veil because I've had a bee go in my ear and up the nose. And one of my coworkers was stung on the eyeball, not even the eyelid, but the eyeball. It's not like I don't mess around with the veil. I see lots of people without the veil on, but I don't mess around with no veil. But yeah, not now. And my bees, actually, those bees have been like that since May. When I got them, the first 2 weeks, they were not so aggressive, but ever since they were more than a 4-frame nuke, they have been on that. They actually have calmed down a lot. It's almost as if they were in this like mad rush to get as much done as possible. And now that they know that there's not as much work to do, they're like, all right, we can calm down. They just exploded. The queens were going crazy, and they just I just didn't want to even bother them. I was like, seems like you got everything under control. I just leave you alone. You won't want me there. Just make sure you guys have space, and see you in a little bit. So how are you guys doing with your small hive beetles? I've just started. Now in Hawaii, they were awful. I've seen yards of 100 hives just slimed out, but I didn't see a single hive beetle until a month ago, and they're still just in the cracks and crevices. But I'm getting a little worried that I'm starting to see one of my hives that's a lot smaller. They did not successfully requeen, so they're on the little low side, and I'm starting to wonder if I should be pulling out some of those extra frames in there. I'm putting more beetle traps in. I mean, I know Bruce, that's an issue you have, but you're and former.
Yeah. We've talked about that. Yeah, we've talked about that offline, I think. Greg, you got any guidance for up there in your neck of the woods?
Do you see them a lot there, or are they usually not get too bad before winter comes?
Well, we used to see them, but our old kind of base of operations was about only half a mile away. But soil type and tilth made all the difference. So we used to be on a north-facing. The farm was on a north-facing hillside, and it was spring seeps, heavy clay soil, very anaerobic. And we fought hive beetles something ferocious. We moved to a bigger farm just a half a mile away that had the high ground. It actually had topsoil, had very good drainage, and we have not had the hive beetle issues at all. Nothing has changed other than the soil type. We've incorporated some different types of boxes that encourage more propolis on the inside, but we were seeing an improvement with hive beetles just by switching locations. So this year, and I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, because there's been times where it has just been, I've cracked the lid and it's just a sea of hive beetles in the past. This year, I probably have only seen maybe 20 hive beetles all year long, and we We try to keep our operation under about 400 colonies, and we make a bunch of nukes. So we're cracking lids thousands of times a year, and I've probably only seen about 20 hive beetles this year. So I don't know if that has anything to do with how bad the winter was this past year. It was very, very cold, minus 29 with the wind chills. As you remember, you guys probably got similar weather. So right now we've got low mite counts and no real hive beetles to speak of. And the only time that we actually see hive beetles is just what you kind of explained there. If something went queenless, if they swarmed and she didn't get mated and came back, or if they are just kind of going downhill for whatever reason, if they start losing population and you've got, 4 or 5 frames of bees with, 10 combs, or they were in double deeps and then they went downhill, those are the ones that when they have those protein residues, that pollen leftover or bee bread remnants, those are the ones that hive beetles kind of move into. But we just haven't seen the hive beetles.
Before I moved to Hawaii, I never saw them in Philly. Like Hawaii, I never even saw a single pollen patty in Hawaii, because like that was just a breeding ground for hive beetles. I was like scared to put them in my hive here, and I was like, people say there aren't hive beetles. I'll try. I like put in a piece of
little bits.
How this goes.
There's a joke, like, Bruce will say, he'll send a picture, and he'll be like, he'll just show these towels that have, 200 small hive beetles on them. It's just plastered with them. And I'll go through an inspection, and I think it is the northern climates. They just can't tolerate it. Like the last time I went through and did deep dive inspections on colonies, the most that I saw in a colony was 4. It's just, we just do not have them. So I think our winters, at least up here, it just gets too cold.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I really just haven't seen them until just recently, which is the worst time to see them.
Mm-hmm.
I do see them. We see them, I think, starting to. It looks like they peak this year, but I tell you what it looks like to me is when we start to get those cool nights, it seems as though the bees have run the hive beetles to the top part of the colony, and then they corral them. They'll make a little propolis encampment around, and then the lids are right on top, and they're just hanging out there waiting to die. But when we go in to crack open our lids, we crack them open, and then you see the little looks like a fairy ring, and then you see the hive beetles just scattering all out, and there might be 4 or 5 in that one little area. In the past, though, this was always the time of year where we would see them at the tops of the colony. So I don't know if the bees are finally just getting them ran out, or if it's when it's cooling off, if they're up in the warmer part of the hive, that probably could be too.
I found them under the lid, on the bottom. In Hawaii, it was like you had to have your varroa mite levels low so that they were strong enough to battle them, and you had to have the hive, like you really had to manage space. I love those green bottoms with the oil pan below them, but if you have, like an apiary where you're moving your hives, that's not a feasible thing. And really just the wet areas, like I would have my hives in the higher elevations, and so then they really had to be in like full sun as much as possible, because it's just so humid and moist, and there's like mango trees, and there's like rotting fruit on the ground, and it's a beetle's paradise. Have you ever put them in a trash bag and then they like eat through the plastic?
Oh my gosh, no.
There's a scientist or a biologist that was also a beekeeper that was trying to do research using hive beetles to dispose of plastic. Because they will eat through like a contractor's. Well, I'm not positive about the contractors, but it will definitely be like a regular trash bag. They will just, I've made the mistake of putting them in my trash can. They're like a really gross little.
Wow.
I took for my class, I wanted to take videos of hive beetle slime. So I put a piece of comb in like on a plate and left it outside or in a little Ziploc bag. And within a week, there was larvae squirming around and sliming it up. And I didn't have bees on my property, but they found it really fast. And they're just it's very bad over there. Bruce, you're very quiet about the hive beetle. Is it a
I'm interested in what you guys have to say. You guys were up north, but yeah, I've got plenty to say. I was going to show you. For some reason, I was trying to show this screen, and my whole screen filled up, and I wasn't sure how to find it. And so anyway, I am not very technology savvy. I'm not. Y'all three, you guys are way more savvy than I am. But let me share a little screen with a technique I use. I've got one technique I just tried and true. I come back to over and over again. There are about 4 or 5 different things I do. And I'm going to show you this one first. These are called Dixie H700 disposable towels. Same principle as Swiffer sheets, but they actually are they're like a disposable towel. They're white, and they're long. They're rectangle shaped, and so you can rip them in strips of 3. And they'll go from the front of the hive to the back. And so you can put where it'll loop over the front of the hive and the back. And so the bees can't pull it out. If you just stick it in there, they'll pull the thing out. So you got to leave it in there. But I just lay it over the top, right through the middle of the colony. And usually I just put it on the top. If it's a real bad problem, I'll put it in between each box, and it just murders hive beetles. Let me see if I can show this screen without losing you guys. If I lose you, I'll come back on. But,
I have they use the Brawny Dynamax towels at the place I worked for, but it could be like hard to find them. So I tried just regular shop towels, and it was like blue confetti all over the ground. So is that why is that what the Dixie towels are like?
they don't really tear them out at all. They just can't. But here, I'm going to show you. I'm just, so here, see, I just tapped it twice and
look at this. It's a video of a video of a video, Bruce.
I'm having a hard time here. Hold on. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. You guys,
Bruce,
I'm sorry.
Look at that. What screen do we watch?
Yes, I know. Look at this.
Oh, goodness. What am I doing wrong?
Why don't you just text me the picture?
I'm sorry. I don't know how to even get out of the screen I'm in right now. Hold on. Why wouldn't it just pop up? Do I just need to hit it once?
It's hilarious. So click.
Why isn't it showing? Guys, I'm sorry. There, I did it again.
So do this. Go down to stop sharing.
Okay.
So maximize the image that you want to share. And then when you go down to share.
Okay. I know what you're saying.
On, share image file, or you can do share screen, entire screen or window. There's a couple.
That's what I was trying to do, but for some reason.
Is that the desktop of your computer? Is that neat? My desktop computer has like 500 files on it. That's
no. This I've got a second. I've got to see, Brian, what it does. It keeps going over to the wrong screen. Okay, let's try this.
Just drag it over.
I did.
Laryssa, he is.
I'm dumb. Is what I am.
Technologically challenged. So.
Okay.
All right, let's see if this works. Let's try this again. I'm going to share the screen.
Maybe share the window and then just click the window you want to share.
I don't know how to do that. Hold on. There we go. Let's try this. Okay, I want to make it bigger though. Hold on.
Yeah, it looks like the Brawny towels.
They're similar probably, but over here, if you can just tell it, like they're long enough, they go through the entire part of the hive. That's probably got 200 or 300 beetles on it. It's got a lot. I don't know if it's got that many, but it's just got a lot. What the bees will do is the beetles get caught, and the bees tend to propolize it, and they turn into this little stringy looking thing. And when I was pulling these out, this was just Saturday at one of my locations. While I was pulling these out, there were still beetles that were caught in them that were alive in them. They were actually dying, and so it's very effective. So this is probably my go-to. I like this treatment because it's completely it's organic. I mean, it's organic. There's no chemicals at all. There's really the only danger is if you happen to get a queen caught in there, which I can tell by the strip right now, there are maybe 4 bees caught in that thing total.
There is one downside though.
What's that?
There is one downside. I probably with those towels too, like the Brawny ones that Frederick Dunn informed me of in my comments, that apparently tiny little fibers when the bees chew it up have been found in honey.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
I guess it's possible, but
that's because Fred is a Flow Hive fan.
I don't.
Yeah.
alive.
There's another one. See all those beetles caught?
Oh
Here's
my
the box of towels written right there. See, it's just like it's all black. It's hard. I know it's kind of small, but anyway.
Do you get bees stuck in those?
What's that?
I sometimes get bees stuck in those brawny ones.
Very, very few. Very few, yeah. Hey, I figured out.
Try to get
Bruce, well done.
I'm trying.
Guys,
Okay,
good
now
Bruce.
I'm
Nice job, Bruce.
Good.
Nice
All right,
job.
let's do one more just for fun to make sure I still know what I'm doing. All right, here's another one. Go. Why isn't it sharing? There it goes.
Wow.
Look at all those.
They really.
Looks like a churro. Hive beetle churro.
Yeah, you won't want to eat that though, I promise.
Unreal.
Anyway, so that's the number one. That's my. I used to use the Beetle Blasters. I still do use those some, and I use an off-label product, which people they basically crucify me about that. I use Avion. It's a roach bait basically, but I put 2 drops in the very bottom of those traps. I've done that before, and it absolutely annihilates. Like those things will fill completely up with beetles, like thousands of beetles. If I've got a real bad problem, that's kind of my last resort. I'll pull those out. But I don't like to do it. Typically, I try not to. But if it's hive, if it's that or losing the hive, I'll go ahead and do that. That is very effective. I have started using. I got some samples from RPB Works, Robert Peebles, down in Texas. Stan Gore mentioned him earlier. He has these. They're the ones I have are like a fluorescent green color, and they're the same principle as Beetle Blasters, but they're I think they're 3D printed, aren't they, Brian? And they are durable. They're heavy duty. They have a lid that you can slide in and out, and so you can just rebait them. And what I used in those, I just put some in my colonies this past Saturday. I put diatomaceous earth in the bottom of them. That's another way. That's a more organic way. See how that goes in there? They're very heavy duty. They're very good, and they work extremely well. I say that the principle of them, they're like a beetle blaster on steroids. They're durable. You know, beetle blasters are good for one use. If you use oil, probably one use. If you use diatomaceous earth or roach bait, you can get a couple of uses out of them, but then they start cracking and they start breaking down, or they just get all plugged up and they don't work very well. What I'll do with beetle blasters is I'll just dump all the beetles out and then rebait them, but you can only get 1 or 2 good uses out of them. I also have started, there's some beekeepers here in Alabama that are firm believers in the using grub-X around the base of the colonies. They say when the grubs or the little larvae fall out that it'll kill them. And I've tried it, and I have fewer beetles than I've had. I really haven't had as much of a problem this year as I have in the past. So maybe that's helping. Let's see what else. That Ozark Bee Barn in where are they at? They're in Missouri. Ozark Bee Barn or Arkansas. They're in Arkansas, but they have these things called beetle crushers. You put them over the top of the frames, leave a little gap, and the beetles get in. The bees drive them under there, and then you just push them down, and it crushes the beetles underneath. And so I checked some of those that I had set this past Saturday, and they work. You know, the beetles. But what you got to do, I learned though, the beetles get under there. I guess the bees corral them under there. But as soon as you lift the lid up, you gotta crush them, or else the beetles come running out, because that's what it looks like right there. The beetles are running underneath the edge. And but if you don't, you know, the beetles, when you lift the lid up, the beetles just the bees go running everywhere, and the beetles do too. And so you gotta, as soon as you raise that lid up, you gotta push those down and crush the beetles. So those are kind of the main things I use. I just pull out all the stops. Frankly, I haven't had as big a problem this year so far as I've had in past years. I do believe part of it may be the success with the grub-X possibly building up over time in the soil. I apply it a couple times a year, or not a couple times a year, every couple of months throughout the year, starting in February, March, all the way through. In late fall, you can get grub-X for cheap, like at Home Depot, and my wife just goes and buys just several bags of it. Last year she bought all they had, and it's just really, really cheap compared to what it normally is. And so I just try to keep that around them. I don't know if it helps, but I know I have fewer beetles than I have in the past. This one yard where I was showing the towels, that is a yard I manage for a friend. He kind of pays me to manage his bees for him. He's kind of a wealthy guy, and it is in the shade. It's sandy soil. It's kind of damp down there, and so it's just like a breeding ground for hive beetles. They're just going to have beetles down there where they're located. The trees have grown up over the years to where now it's pretty much in full shade. They may get a little bit of sun in the morning time, but they it's pretty much in the shade, and so I've got to watch them pretty close. But they're usually, it's also my most cranky bee yard that I manage. They're feisty there, but they usually are strong and healthy, and they make a lot of honey right there. So, but I wonder if they're really a little bit feisty because they have high beetle pressure just bugging them, or if they're feisty because their genetics are both. I think it's probably both. Uh, but I haven't really worked hard on the genetics in that bee yard yet because I've just been focused on my bees more. But I think next year, if I can get Zach to send me some extra queens, I've already talked to him about it. And I don't know if he's going to be able to or not, but I'm going to try to replace those two and get those bees nice and
Hey, Bruce, have you ever
strong. So
done and Laryssa as well? I don't know what the soil type. I mean, I'm an idiot and I've never been to Hawaii, but I'm just thinking like, Joe meets the volcano everywhere. I know it's not like that, but
No,
as far as soil, what were any idea what the soil pH was back at home in Hawaii?
I put beehives on lava fields on a 70-acre farm. And we put a beehive on the roof of a barn that had a corrugated metal roof, and we still had hive beetles.
Still had hive beetles. Okay.
But like what I did, because when you don't have a cold winter and there's something for them to forage year round, there's not a lot, but from November to January, but I just harvested everything. I never had a honey super left on my hive. It was just 2 brood boxes, and I left them packed. There's Zach says it's high acid. Thanks, Zach.
High acid. So you're talking like that's what I was getting at. There was a great comment here. Cottonland Apiary, Franklin Gleason. He noticed, and he's down in South Carolina, but one of the farm sites that had where they were stored their agricultural lime, which is going to be, probably in the 10 to 11 pH range. They didn't have any hive beetles there, but the other yards they did. That's what we've seen here in the heavy clay soil that's anaerobic. It's very acidic. It was like 4 to 4.5, probably ideal for blueberries, but nothing else. But I wondered if you guys knew what your pH was, and if it had anything to do with what you were seeing.
Yeah, I have no idea.
In Hawaii, a big problem they had was that the varroa mites and the hive beetles came just a few years apart. And so it took a very long time for people to realize what was going on, and varroa mites arrived, because in theory they shouldn't have, since bees weren't allowed to be shipped into Hawaii for the last so many decades.
Yeah.
They came, and then the USDA was preventing the import of certain treatments. And then, some people just didn't want to admit it, or they wanted to still be natural beekeepers. And we also had apiaries that were driving their, moving the hives all over the island. So the varroa mites spread very quickly around the Big Island. And then the hive beetle came a few years later, and it just wiped out every single wee colony that there was. Wow. And all these people that weren't used to it, they just like multiplied like crazy. I would say, or my guess was that because of all the fruit trees, that made it a really great breeding ground for hive beetles, since they do feed off of sugar. They're not like the varroa mite that need honeybees for survival. They can survive in a variety of environments. They don't need the beehive, but that is one place that they can thrive in. And so I think Hawaii, that was a big reason why they were there. I had my hives on other people's properties, so doing anything to the soil wasn't an option. I have heard of nematodes helping with that, and people have talked about peppermint in the hive, which I had never tried myself. I was used to. I would open up the lid and see 20, 30 running around. Yeah. That was normal, and that wasn't a concern of mine. My concern was only when I saw them on frames.
Yeah, that's true. That's
trap under the lid and on the bottom. But the farmer put traps in those they look like the CD, case. But the guy had put too much in the trap, and it got hot out, and the poison oozed out, and it killed a bunch of the bees.
Yeah.
So I never tried those because it's like, if used properly, I guess they could work well. And like Bruce said, it's kind of a last resort, because who wants to put that kind of poison in your hive? But if used improperly, it can also do more harm than than good. But in Hawaii, I never had more than 30 hives, and so I had a 12 cubic foot chest freezer, and I always stored some excess frames of honey in the chest freezer, and I would harvest a little bit more than maybe other people would, enough so that the hive could survive, enough honey in the brood, but that was it. And I took the supers off, and if I needed to, I would feed them back some of their honey frames that I had stored up in my freezer. And that was just how I managed space. And with the space management, the bees did fine on their own, managing small hive beetles. The only times I had my hive slimed out was when they like swarmed and I didn't know it or something like that, because you don't check your hives all the time, or you get really lazy, or you have a baby and you just don't see them for like a couple months, and then you're like, oh. I really enjoy having my bees on my property now. I've never actually had a home where I had my bees in the yard, and it's been really nice having them close by. That's for sure.
That's fun. Yeah, I remember I asked you, I don't know if it was in a one-on-one conversation or if it may have been during our live chat that we did, or our interview that we did, but I said, what do you do with all the frame? Because that's still one of my least favorite things. Probably the nastiest thing, in my opinion, in beekeeping is hive beetle slime outs. I hate them. And now it's not so bad. Like, I do have some dead outs here or there for whatever reason with the number of colonies I have. And I noticed, I think I was telling you guys last week, I was out in the bee yard and I was checking queens. I got some queens from Greg, and I was checking the queens, and I had a dead out, and I just, to manage, I figured I would probably use those boxes with the splits, maybe of some of the stronger splits. And so I just set the double deep on top of another hive that was a living hive. I just set it up there, and I'm like, I'll come back in a couple of weeks and I'll just probably use these boxes. Well, I got out to the bee yard. I found some splits that needed some extra boxes. And so I popped the lid off, and I pulled the top box off and kind of set off the side. And the bottom box, I noticed there was some yellow powder laying around the outside of that hive. Now, the one hive was strong, the one that it was sitting on top of. Basically, it was like 4 deeps, but 2 of them didn't have bees in them. There's 2 that were stacked on top from the dead out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, because that's a sure sign of hive beetles. You start seeing yellow powder, or especially when you see the yellow slime, there's a dead out, probably hive beetles involved. And so I picked the bottom box up, and it was just, how when there's a dead out and there's hive beetles, all the larvae, the little maggots are just squirming around. And when it's not necessarily a slime out, it's not as nasty. It just it's that yellow powder. It's the pollen, I guess, that as they eat through the pollen, it drops down to the bottom. But you start using the hive tool and scraping around, and you just got writhing like little maggots everywhere. So I took a frame. I started taking frames out of that box, and I can't remember if it was the top box or the bottom that I checked on. And I went over to a neighboring hive, and I tipped it sideways, and I wrapped it on the top of the box. And there were probably, I don't know, hundreds of beetles that came out of that frame. So I did the quick hive tool beetle smashing, that thing going on there. I just killed them. And I did that until I went through all the frames and did that. There were probably thousands that were just hanging out in that empty box. So had I not checked that, had I put that box just on top of another hive, one of Greg's new queens from the split, had I put, hundreds, if not thousands of beetles on it, it would have probably just destroyed that colony. But what I found this year, I've had only 1 or 2 true slime outs out of all my colonies. I have had a few more dead outs, but I've had, in every single dead out I found, it's not the slimy, it's more the powder type stuff. But I find, that the beetles will get in that pollen, they'll get in those frames even without bees, kind of like you said, and they'll breed, and there'll be larvae down on the bottom. And I was telling them, one of my favorite things to do, one of my favorite pastimes is, not one of my favorite pastimes, that's a stretch, but I really don't want to see hive beetle larvae. But if I do, probably the favorite thing I like to do with the hive beetle larvae is to just pull that box off. You see that yellow pollen, and you get your blowtorch. I got a blowtorch I used to light my smoker, and I just cook them, and it eliminates them. It eliminates them so fast. They don't drop on the ground. You don't have to figure anything to do with the larvae. They cannot stand the heat. And typically there's a lot of beetles down there with them too. So it kills them instantly. You kind of have to move your hive, kind of move the larvae around and everything, so the ones on the bottom get cooked as well. But
Smell it from here, Bruce. Thanks, bud.
I know it does. It smells like burnt hair is what it smells like. It's kind of gross, but
I guess I have kind of done the same thing, because My
Yeah.
bees weren't on my property, so I would just have like a roll of contractors' trash bags in my car
Yeah.
and throw all the boxes into these trash bags, bring them into my car, and
Yeah.
I would leave them like in my driveway. And in like the Hawaii sun, they would just like
Ooh,
They would cook. Yeah. But that's what you mentioned to me, and I did that. I should.
I've
Yeah.
had like blocks of beeswax melt like sitting on a folding table in my backyard. So, but my bees are also on my property. So I wasn't that concerned about driving, like 20 miles down the road and bringing these beetles there because like they
Sure.
weren't gonna also like get back onto the hives on my property. Yeah, I do
Sure.
remember you asking me that question, and I never even thought twice about like what I did for them. I think I don't use foundation, so it's a lot
Okay.
faster for me to just like, oh, the wax just gets mushy, pops out, and then I just like hose them all down with the high pressure on the hose nozzle and put them on the side next time.
Yeah. The worst was.
When they're buying honey.
Yeah.
Just look like
Yeah. They're
it's like
gross.
it's all antibacterial and all that stuff. So
It's still the worst ones to me are when I'm in the bee yard and it's a slime out and I don't know what to do with those nasty slimy frames. And so the best thing to do, I think, I did it after I talked to you. I would take some black garbage trash bags and I just put them in there and just get rid of the frames. I didn't reprocess them. I just got rid of them because to me it's just I can get these. I buy my frames now from Greg. I can get my frames from Greg. Nice new frames, and sometimes it's just time to trade the frames out anyway. So, but I would like to.
I was
Never,
tired that night.
I've never seen a slime out.
Yeah, you're lucky.
It smells
I think
really bad.
the northern beekeepers have their own problems, and hive beetles are a problem. But up there, you guys have your own issues as
And it
well.
can also cause your honey to ferment. If you harvest
Oh yeah,
that you
Yeah.
think
yeah.
have slime on them, it will ferment your honey.
Oh, if I see any indication of slime on a frame, it does not go in the extractor. It just, as a matter of fact, because it is, yeah, it's gross.
Adult.
I would like to encourage folks, if you have any questions for Laryssa or for any of us, just put them in the comments in all caps. We have Laryssa for a little while longer, and we'd love you to throw some comments in there and questions, all caps, so we can recognize them more quickly. If we don't get any, that's fine. But if you have anything for us, I'll be sure to pop them in there. Laryssa, I'd like to kind of shift a little bit and
Yeah, sorry.
no. Hive beetles is a huge issue right now. It's really an issue, and so it's we needed to talk about that, and I'm glad we did. I was going to bring it up. That was part of the plan anyway. I was thinking about that a little bit today because we spent so much time. You and I have talked about it. A few years ago we talked about it at length, and I think you were doing a live chat one day, and I asked a question about them. That may be where you answered the question about what you did with them. I can't remember because I've battled those things my whole career as a beekeeper. I think the number one thing to do is to have nice, strong colonies.
Yeah.
And I do think soil makes a difference. I have had slime outs in the full sun though, so it's not always about the sun. I've had them in different areas, but I think the key is to have nice, strong, and healthy colonies. But I know that once again, your channel, Beekeeping Made Simple, kind of go through if you would, see if anyone has some questions for us. I think people are just kind of enjoying the conversation. So, but let us know a little bit about kind of what some of your keys to successful beekeeping have been. I know that you mentioned you're kind of the hobby, just sideliner type level beekeeper, but what are some of the key things, if you could think of maybe 3 to 5 key points that you would recommend to people to really make sure that they have a success at beekeeping? What would those 3 to 5 main points be?
Well, I honestly have seen an interesting, I think, change in beekeeping. I don't know how long you guys have been beekeepers, and I've only been doing it for like 12 or 14 years or something. But in Hawaii, I saw people just starting the transition to seeing the varroa mite, and people there were still in the mindset that like you didn't have to find your queen, you didn't like have to be such a proactive beekeeper. And it seems like to me, because of these pests now, I think some beekeepers are a little bit too extreme in how much they manage their hives. And I think that for a lot of people, less is more, and they're causing more problems for their bees than if they like just stopped bothering their bees so much. So definitely one key to successful beekeeping, I think, is to trust that the bees actually know more about what it means to make their hive healthy and successful than we do, and to stop throwing feed in all year round and opening the hive and moving frames around and swapping boxes and putting comb honey things on there and taking it off, and like just they're just constantly meddling in their life. And I'm like, this is not a dog. This is not a daily thing. You don't need to feed them every day. Like, you have to trust a little bit more of nature, and that maybe we don't agree with how the honeybee world works in some ways, but we still have to have respect for it. And that is how they've evolved. And I'm not a treatment-free beekeeper, but uh, I do think that another part of being successful is understanding what kind of beekeeper you want to be and working towards it. I don't think it's good to just make decisions about like what kind of beekeeper you want to be and just doing it. This isn't like a party. You're not like Republican or Democrat. You don't have to be like treatment free or whatever. You can just have goals and work towards them, as opposed to making a declaration that this is how you're going to run your hives and then be so like adamant about it. But I guess more on the technical end, I think, I mean, it's hard to answer because I wouldn't consider myself successful.
Yeah.
I've gone, had my ups and downs. I'm not running like thousands of hives or hundreds of hives. I hope to be successful here in Pennsylvania, and I had success in Hawaii. But I definitely try to push for people to develop an intuition and to just spend time observing their bees more so than learning about them from other beekeepers. I think you're going to have a better idea of what to do, not by like asking somebody that's not there at their hive. But I like to spend a lot of time outside the hive. I try not to bother them too much inside as much as possible, but I think there's a lot you can learn just by the entrance and the sounds that they make. And the more time you spend with your bees, like as a beekeeper of 10 years, you don't need to do this, but for beginners, they would definitely learn a lot more if they just like started to spend more time observing them and like listening to their buzzing sounds. And I think that would give them a lot more insight into how they're doing and when robbing is happening and infestations and when they're queenless. There's actually, you can kind of tell when a hive doesn't have a queen based off of the sound that they make if you like actually get to know them well enough to there's this book called Atomic Habits that I really love, and he talks about intuition, and he says that it's not like this like theoretical thing or something you're born with. It's nothing like religious. It's just when you spend a lot of time acclimating your body and your senses to something, you will actually realize problems and when something is different without even knowing it, just because your brain is used to one thing, and when it changes you realize it. So I really try to recommend people get that intuition, because that will help you, I think, a lot more than all these books and videos and stuff. I think people overdo it with the technical jargon and the Demaree method versus the whatever method for splitting your hives. It's like, I think a lot of that stuff is unnecessary. I think people need to go a little bit back to like nature, and like Greg was talking about the sounds of late summer. I mean, I never hear people talking like that anymore. Like, do people ever listen now?
Yeah.
They should be listening to the sounds of it and what other pollinators are doing and what their flowers are doing and what you're seeing on their road. That's like so much better. It will make you so much better beekeeper. And I know people want like that immediate answer, and that's not the answer that anyone wants to hear. like spend 15 hours over the course of the summer watching your bees. Like, no, they want me to tell them that on July 14th, put a treatment in their hive. But it will really hone in on their skills long term.
I agree with you, and I think that I know Greg, like you said, Greg is really into that. We're all in. I think experience is the best teacher. And the name of your channel is Beekeeping Made Simple, and you can get lost in the weeds with all the techniques out there, all the different ways of doing things, all the different ideas. But beekeeping basics are the same, regardless of what method you're using. You got to learn your bees. Greg, could you speak on that a little bit? She hit a lot of chords, similar to what you talk about lots of times.
Yeah, I absolutely love what you said there, Laryssa. And I think as we spend time mentoring folks and educating folks, there's a human habit where when anyone is getting into something new, they want to be immediately successful. And it's something that we say all the time in our talks and presentations, that there are no shortcuts to success. You might find a shortcut to finding to being successful at something, but it's not until you start piggybacking and stacking individual successes before you are full of success. And so many folks, they want the shortcut answer. They want to be told, just tell me what to do and I'll do it, and therefore it'll be right. But they don't take the time to understand the context. They don't take the time to understand the nuance. And there is no one size fits all. My wife and I were just talking about it. There are so many folks who just want to be told what to do, but they don't want to take the time to understand the why or the how first. It's a tricky spot for so many folks to be in. But to be successful with beekeeping, you've got to stack one little success after the other over and over and over and over and over again before you start to get any kind of idea of what you're doing. And even at that point, you fully recognize that beekeeping is one of the greatest humblers you'll ever know. And there is no fully knowing anything. The one thing that you really know is that you won't know it all.
It's a very humbling hobby, and not for some of the very type A personalities.
Yeah.
I saw someone's comment where they said that YouTube makes beginners. I forget how he worded it, but I definitely agree with some of that. I mean, I don't think it's YouTube as like an evil person, or YouTube has beginners worrying about too many things they don't need to be worried with. But there's a lot. It's hard to make a channel where you have videos that people watch, but at the same time, you're not falling into that trap of you have to have this catchy title or this crazy tagline that's like, don't do this, or
Right.
best ever ways to stop this, and never worry about hive beetles when you do this. It's like, I can't say that because you're still gonna have hive beetles. Even if I tell you about all these traps and tricks, like, Bruce, you're still like, this is what I do, but you can't make a video that's like, never worry about this ever again. And it's like, but people want their videos to get watched, and this is what everyone says you're supposed to put it to get that. And it's tricky and it's hard, and I don't really fault anyone for falling for those tricks. But it also, I don't go onto YouTube often to learn about beekeeping because it makes me feel inadequate and kind of depressed, and so I often stay away from it. And when I have a real specific question, I Google it, and if it takes me to a YouTube video, I might check on it. It depends on who wrote it or who made it, whether I actually click on it or not.
That's what we all have to do. I think, to use an analogy, and you could use this with anything in life, really. I like sports, and when you think of any team, just to say a football team, since football season is about to come, and you have a brand new coach that comes into your team, and they're going to coach this thing. And a couple of years ago at the college that I follow at BYU, that's my team where I used to go to school, and they had a new defensive coordinator come in, and so they had a lot of good athletes, and he was a really good defensive coordinator. He coached them what to do, but he told them, you go do this, you go do that, because they didn't understand the full concepts. They couldn't pick it up. You can't pick everything up immediately. And so the first year they struggled some. They were better than they were the previous year. Last year they were really good. This year now everybody is understanding all the concepts involved. Everybody's working together. They understand the whole package. I think the bees are kind of like that as well. You come in initially, you read the books, you watch the YouTube videos, you learn the basics, but the basics can vary from one book to the other. You know, the beehive has to face the southeast. You have to have this. You have to have that. It needs to be 18 inches off the ground. You know, you have to have this type of frame. You have to have this type of hive. You have to have this type of. You have to have an inner cover. You have to have this, and this. And then when you get your bees, you have to get a package and do it this way. And so as a new beekeeper and you don't know any better, you have to learn the basics that way. But as you kind of like what everybody's talked to tonight, you know, as you begin to experience the bees, and as you say, Laryssa, just observe the bees, whether you're watching from the outside or you pop the lid and you're watching them on the frame, seeing what they do, you begin to learn from the bees, and you begin to realize that as Greg says, there are no absolutes in beekeeping. There really aren't. And so you kind of have to, as you've done, Laryssa, you kind of have to develop your own, first of all, your own goals and your own strategies to help take care of the bees. And the bees will teach you, as someone mentioned earlier, I think I have it started in the comments, that every time you go into a hive, you can learn something from the bees, but if you take your time and you observe. And I also like what you said, Laryssa, about don't just get in them every day. Don't constantly be in them all the time. You know, sometimes if I want to check the overall health of a colony, now that I have so many, I just have to go fast, and I'll just crack open the top lid, and you can tell almost immediately if it's a healthy colony. Maybe pull a couple of frames out of the top box and see if you got double deep, see if you got a little brood, see if you got everything you need. And that's really all you have to do sometimes, unless you're doing a deeper dive. If you find something wrong, then do it in full investigation of the colony. But that does a couple things. Number one, once you have the experience to kind of know what you're seeing, it helps you be more efficient. It's less invasive for the bees, and it also it just helps the overall health of the colony. If you're in them all the time, it can create problems. Greg, what do you think? What would you tell people? Brian, maybe you could speak to this as well. You know, I tend to agree with Laryssa. Some of my colonies sometimes will go 3 or 4 weeks without me even. I mean, I crack the lid or walk around. I may crack the lid or walk around the bee yard a little bit and check them, but I don't always go deep dives very often through the year, unless I'm doing splits or unless I see a problem. Greg and Brian, maybe start with you, Greg. When you're teaching your people at the learning yard how often to go into colonies, what do you tell them? I know that I try to have a reason to go in before I go, but kind of what do you tell them about frequency of hive checks?
Well, what we try to teach them is it's going to depend on where they're at in their season. But if we run that question all the way back to what is the worst possible scenario, how far can you really go? Let's say we're in the hive today. What is the time interval from when we close the lid right now before, what is the longest that we can stretch out an inspection and still get in there and course correct a problem? That's where we recommend folks are getting in there no later than 14 days. And if it's 14 days, it's a top-down inspection. If they rolled a queen, if there is something going on, if there was a queen cell that just started to form in that moment, if they get in at 14 days, they can get just ahead of a swarm. They can get just ahead of something going downhill severely. There are times of the year, however, where we might be in the colony every day for 3 days, meaning if we're going in to put a bee escape board on ahead of a honey harvest, bee escape comes on. If it's just one super, 24 hours, that goes in. The next day we're coming back to harvest the honey. Then that third day we might come back to put the super on. So there are some times where you might get in every day for a very tight window. There are some times of the year when you get later on in the year and you're past the swarming tendency, you're getting past the honey flow. If you've got treatments on, you might not see that colony for 30 days, for 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks sometimes. And that's okay. But you have to know, like, what is the risk? Mitigate that. What time of year is it? And then kind of go from there. But the big thing I think folks have to get rid of, and that is why there was always going to be the fear mongering. There was always going to be, watch this video where your bees are going to suffer a painful death, and you might too, unless you watch the video all the way in and get my super, super hot tips and tricks at the very end video. Like, folks, you've got to be okay with the ideal of failing, and you have to get okay with the idea of you're not going to do it right. Failure is not the thing that you should be so afraid of that you've got to consume all these videos. Don't be afraid to fail. As soon as you let that go and you say, hey, the outcome is going to be whatever it's going to be, and I'm going to move forward, it frees you up tremendously. And you're not going to spend all night long watching Do This or Die, and your wife might leave you on top of it. Like, enough with these videos.
I know.
But that's what people are programmed to receive, is that fear-mongering tactic. Oh my gosh, if I don't do this, oh, and that video's got 40,000 views, it must be good. You know, Brian, what do you think?
I saw, it's funny that this question is out there because in one of the groups on the old, Facebook thing there was a newer beekeeper that asked this question. And like, I skimmed through the answers and I just had to chuckle. Everybody's saying, I do this. And I commented back and I said, there are so many different factors involved in when you do inspections. First, you need to step back and ask yourself, why are you doing it? Are you just going to do it so that you can invade them and rip them apart and look at bees? And I told the person, I said, your location, so context is key, time of the year. Like for me in the springtime, when you're trying to avoid bees going into the trees, yeah, you're going to check them a little bit more often just because you want to know all those signs of potential swarms. You're going to do your splits, things like that. When they're riding through a good solid, flow, what are you doing? You're not tearing their brood nest up. All you're doing is managing space. So really, are you doing inspections then while you lift up boxes? Nah, that one's heavy. Let me add another one. So there's certain times of the year that dictates how often you check them, what you need to do. Like after, I think as far as me doing like a deep dive, when I installed those packages and did splits and things like that, I was doing some deep dives, just checking patterns, things like that. How are the queens doing? I wanted to see those signs that they were building up. But it gets to a point where you're like, okay, these girls are on cruise control. I'm going to do more damage tearing the entire thing up than good. And I think once I pulled all my supers off, and like recently I wanted to check them just to make sure things were queen, all the colonies were queen right. I wanted to look at the patterns to see if any of the queens were having issues. So certain times of the year is that kind of dictates for me what I do, how often I check, if I need to do that deep dive. So it just, there's so many variables involved in that question. And that's why I kind of laughed when I saw that one earlier, and all these people, they're throwing out their little comments, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
Nobody asked where the person was located. Nobody asked any of those type of questions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Keith Russell says half tracks and honeybees. Nowadays, I usually look at 2 or 3 frames and close them up. That's what I do a majority of the time. But there are times when, if I'm putting in treatments or if I'm testing, or if I detect a problem, if I pop that lid off and something doesn't look right or smell right, I'm going to do a deep dive and see what's going on, and at least flag the colony to kind of watch it more closely. But most of the time, when I'm just doing random checks, I'll walk through the bee yard, maybe even crack random lids. But if I'm going in them all, I'll crack the lid. Look, if the bees are covering all the frames and they look happy, I'll just may pull one frame out, maybe not even pull a frame out, and then close the lid, just kind of checking the overall health of the colonies. I think it's, Laryssa, I know you've got a busy life, you got a family and everything, so we don't want to keep you too long, but I'd like to take a little, okay, that's a good question. Laryssa, do you know what months queens are not available in Hawaii?
I don't know. Zachary is still there. I mean, I know what months I can't get queens in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And that would be the months when they are selling them overseas. I've never not been able to buy a queen in Hawaii. The queen breeders are open year round. But when it comes to like January, February, March, they won't sell me one because they're too busy selling to mainland and Canadian beekeepers.
Bruce.
So unless you're putting in a big order, they're not going to sell me like 10, 20 queens. They're like, yeah, Zach says you can do all year. I mean, there's never like a time when they're like, okay, everyone take the week or the month off. The farm I worked for, Christmas berry was harvested in like August, September, October, November was when they did all their splits. December was like when they encouraged everyone to go on vacation. Not much happened. And January-ish was still also pretty quiet. February, the Mackinac trees would explode. And of course, my son was born in February. And it was like, I was like, I had nobody help me. I was just like, you guys are going to for Thanksgiving forward is sketchy.
That is a good
for on Black Friday. Yeah, that's a good point too.
Because of the cold weather. Yeah, that's a good point.
The cold weather and everything's going to take longer. So you can't like overnight things when it's Black Friday and they're just being inundated with.
That's true too. Let's move maybe towards a little bit of a rapid fire. We've got some questions and comments starred. If you put them in all caps, we tried to catch them. If you have any more questions you'd like to put out there, go ahead and throw them in pretty quick here. We're going to go ahead and respect Laryssa's time and run through a few more questions and then kind of work towards wrapping it up here. But so let's just see what we got here. I'm going to see what we have started. We have just a few questions here. Okay, let's see. This is for back earlier in the chat. DC's Bees. DC is a great supporter of the channel.
He's
these live chats. He's awesome.
Yeah.
Says Laryssa, have you gotten adjusted to your new climate? I hope settled in well.
Yeah, now that it's warm out.
yeah, for sure.
Into the summer weather just fine. Yeah. We are having some serious issues with insulating this house, though. It's like just turned 30. So it's like the windows are starting to go to crap. And and thinking about getting a wood burning stove put into the house and all those things we haven't really considered. Our propane tank is leased, which is made us pay a fortune, and oil prices last year and all that junk.
Well, there's nothing quite like the radiant heat from a wood burning stove either. You just can't match that. It's the most incredible thing.
I mean, fireplaces, I never lived in a house with a fireplace. Like, 'cause I grew up in Philly. I grew up in like the city. We had a driveway, which was better than what a lot of other people had to park a car, and this small backyard, no fireplaces. And we have one here, and I was like, I don't like this thing. This isn't making the house smoky, and it's not even keeping me warm. Like, I don't feel I don't so we're thinking about the wood burning stove, but
they're
we
incredible.
just have absolutely no idea how to get it into the house. One company sells them, and they gave us a quote for $8,000 to sell us a wood burning stove and install it. And we're like, okay, people sell them on Facebook for very cheap, but we have absolutely no idea how you get it into the house.
The installation might be difficult. All right, I just gonna.
Yeah, it's been okay.
Brian, thanks for the super chat, man. I really appreciate it. Hashtag stream team, hashtag fellowship, hashtag be the change. Thanks, Brian. Mark Zenner says, thanks, stream team. I have honey from each of your businesses. Each bottle is excellent. Thanks for the support, Mark. We really appreciate that. Okay, we got. Let's see. We have a question here. This is probably one I don't know. Greg, you might be able to address this a little. You might be the pro in the room to address this. Or Laryssa, you got any comments on this as well? Was asked today about feeding syrup while apigar is on the hive. Thoughts?
You guys use Apigard? I know it's not a popular thing in
I never have.
Pennsylvania.
I've used it. I've had good success with it. But
yeah, it's in Hawaii.
Doesn't it say on the package not to feed, or can you feed with Apigard? Greg, what do you think? I know you've used it before.
The idea with not to feed is, I think you want the bees' attention to be drawn to dragging those crystals out during that time period. I can tell you that I have used Apigard at times of the year where the bees needed fed. And if you're using, you definitely don't want to fool the hive top feeder. And if you've got a frame feeder in there, they just gorge on that and they completely ignore the Apigard. However, if you're feeding with like a bucket feeder, like what's over my shoulder, that can work because it's a trickle feed. But the biggest thing is I don't think the feeding doesn't cause a health issue. Not that I've seen with the bees. It's just their attention is drawn towards the feed and not dragging the crystals out. And then what you end up with is a bunch of Apogard on the card or in the in the foil pan that's just dry and crusty that they never drug out. So it's sort of a waste of an effort. But you can do it. But bucket feeder, I think, would be the way to do it. And if the hive is that hungry and starved out and they need feed, and they've got high mites, I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I got you. All right, Justin Strom says, I just lost 5 hives to getting raided out or absconding. Can I store their frames with capped brood and bee bread? I froze them for 48 hours. I mean,
Laryssa?
sure, they'll just... Yeah, Laryssa, what do you think about that?
Yeah, people have asked me that before. Like, will the bees clean out the brood and should I give it back to them? And I don't, because it seems like more work. Like, I don't know. Like, I know that they need to use honey or nectar to produce the comb, and that's work. Cleaning out the cells is work. Like, if the frames are dark and like old and all propolised and you're going to be throwing them out in next year anyway, like, I don't really see the point to keeping it. But yeah, I prefer to just let them build new comb, unless you really have like nothing to give your bees and you really want to give them some drawn out comb. I don't know. And like, if they got raided out or they absconded, why did they abscond? Did they have viruses and nosema, or like, was there mold in the hive? Like, what's going on with this comb? Is it full of mite treatments? Beeswax is very porous, so I just never really think it's worth it to take that kind of stuff and give it back to the hive. It's one of those things where sometimes I'm afraid I'm doing more harm than good.
Yeah, I don't really freeze frames. I don't have the room to do that with the number of colonies I have, but I have I have given the bees frames that were kind of nasty looking, actually, and they, on a good strong colony, they'll clean it up. They'll drag all the nasty stuff out. They'll fix it and come back like in a week and it looks like there was never that stuff in there. But I totally understand your point, and especially if it's really old, black, nasty comb, I think for sure. Brian, you got
things? It's like,
yeah. Brian, you got any thoughts? You got any thoughts on that?
So
doesn't it fix that?
That's right. Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's everybody's. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I see your point, and I somewhat agree with it. Yeah, for sure.
I used to be the person that I wanted to save everything. Save the bees, save the wax. They made this. It's worth everything. It's gold. But I just within the last it trust me, when I very first started, I had 10 frame equipment, 8 frame, 7 frame, 5 frame. I had horizontal hives, poly hives, apame. I had everything. And I complicated beekeeping is all that I did. Like with my wax, I saved the nastiest looking frames possible because I thought the bees made this. How can I throw this away? The bees made it. But now I've within the last, it's probably been maybe 2 years, I've been cycling out frames. And the one huge benefit to losing colonies is you do not have bees on any of them frames. So if there were frames that were nasty, they got scraped, and I started from scratch this year.
Yeah, I think that's wise.
So
thoughts, Greg?
Like you said, where you have too many hives, it's kind of really helpful to work for an apiary that has hundreds or thousands of hives, because when you see how, like, I saw this apiary, they had 7 beekeepers on staff. They ran 4,000 hives, and then once the varroa mite arrived, they went down to like 2 to 2,500 hives, depending on when they were splitting and whatever. And it was still just 7 people, and it was like amazing to me that they would go to a yard of 100 hives and be done so fast. And I was like, so many ways when you don't have the time, I now spend just as much time managing 4 hives than when I had 20 some hives. And it's just like so silly that I spend so much more time now that it's like I'm afraid of making a mistake because I have so few hives, and I'm just like gotta like baby and coddle these little things so that no mistakes ever happen. But it's not really it's so much more freeing when you have more bees, and it's just
Yeah.
you can't coddle them and want to save on kind of silly, but I actually have tried. I've melted down comb that was attacked by hive beetles and slimed out, and I melted it down to see if I could save the wax. It's like the
Wow.
put like tons of comb in there, and I ended up with this like wax. I was like, and I don't. The cost of electricity is very expensive in Hawaii. Really, really expensive. So it was not worth the electricity to run that wax melter. And I later made a solar one, but it still wasn't worth. It wasn't worth it trying to save all of that stuff.
Yeah. Thoughts, Greg?
I think we sometimes spend too much time as beekeepers stepping over $1 to pick up a quarter, and I think with those frames, I think there you have, and this is no dig, but I think you've got some future liabilities that maybe you haven't experienced, and if you had, then it kind of sets the framework. But when you start talking about freezing brood and then freezing bee bread, you know, if you start thinking about, well, I'm freezing them so I could use them later or to preserve the wax, well, at some point you have to thaw those rascals out. Now you're going to have thawing, decaying brood in there. That's going to create a smell, going to create some nastiness that you're then going to expect the bees to have to clean out. And maybe they do, maybe they don't. But maybe something like a hive beetle or a wax moth gets to that before the bees clean it up. Now all of that work and that hope and anticipation that you had for saving it to move it forward actually ends up being a liability for you, especially with the bee bread. You know, you get that you thaw it out, you leave it outside, you do whatever. We talked about to start hive beetles, find that, slime the whole thing out. Next thing you know, you're scraping the whole thing all the way back down. I think if you can't move those resources like that, if you can't move those into a colony, you know, as long as there's not disease and something funky going on, if you can't move those frames onto another colony who could use it, you know, you might be better off in that scenario. Hopefully it was plastic foundation. If so, scrape those rascals down to the plastic foundation and then kind of put them into storage. That's just the way I look at everything. Is it an asset? Is it a liability? Is it moving forward? Or is it dragging things backwards?
Yeah,
Yeah,
what is it called? That moldy brood that you sometimes see in hives? I forget the name of it. You know, you'll sometimes see like a pupa that has no capping on it, and the pupa's turned like a grayish white color.
Yeah, I can't
sure.
think of it. What's that called?
Yeah, some of that looks like you can sometimes get into some European foul brood. There's some sack brood.
Sack brood. That's what I'm
spooky
thinking.
and weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, the hives always clear that up on their own, but I could definitely see that happening depending on the population. If it's heavy
Sure.
populated hive, they clear it out fast. But
Yeah, I've gotten more, like over the years, I've gotten to where if I don't get the comb utilized before it gets messed up by wax moths or whatever, a lot of times I will just chalk rig. Yeah,
sorry,
I'll often just get rid of the frames, burn them, and start over with new fresh frames. They just draw out new fresh frames so fast, and so. But I do, you know, comb is a valuable asset. If the comb is in good shape, by all means, I do reuse it. But if it gets real nasty, like I would be very hesitant, I think, to freeze brood. Like Greg was saying, those are some really good points that both of you made there. You know, if it's a long-term thing with dead brood in there, that stuff just rots. It's a living thing that's dead now, and it's just kind of nasty to think about that. I've also had brood that I've stored or brood frames that have bee bread in them. And what they tend to do over the winter, I don't freeze them, but they'll tend to get moldy. And I've had bees that'll clean up like honey supers that have some mold on them. They clean them up so fast you can't even tell within a day or two. You can't tell. But with the bee bread, it gets all moldy, and then what they end up doing is they just kind of ignore it. They'll build around it, but if it's just really moldy and nasty, they won't even touch it. And so you're basically putting a wasted frame in there sometimes if you have that type of old dried bee bread. If it's not too hard, they can clean it out. But if it's really hard sometimes, they just like clean. They take all the resources they want, and then they'll just leave that nasty, that old hard as a rock bee bread in there, and just work around it. So you might have a quarter of a frame worth of production, as opposed to where you could have a new frame in there and have them filling the whole thing up.
Have you guys ever harvested pollen, like put pollen traps on your hive? That's something I could never do in Hawaii because it would go.
Oh yeah, for sure.
An hour or so.
You know, I talked about that yellow powder earlier of the beetles pulling that. The beetles pull the bee bread out. That ends up on the bottom of the hive, but that they could just wreak havoc in that. I think down here in Alabama, I know Mike Berry does it in Louisiana, but you have to be on top of it. You have to be harvesting it. I think pulling it off pretty quickly, and probably freezing it. I would imagine. I'm not sure how you process it, but I put some.
I know.
Like
I know.
for like a couple hours.
I know Jason does. You know, out on the eastern shore of Maryland. He'll harvest pollen.
We'll harvest it here, and I think that's where one of the pieces that we sell here in the shop is the Apame bottom board. I think that's perfect. Its highest purpose. It has a beautiful pollen trap built into it, but we only leave that in place. It's a part of the bottom board, so it's not like it's an extra piece of equipment you have to put on and take off. It's a matter of just sliding a tray in and out. But if you leave it on for just 24 hours during like a peak pollen flow, it is unbelievable how much extra pollen will be in there. That's also handy if you get into, like last year here in the Midwest, we got into extreme dearth. What that meant is for plants like goldenrod, who still will, as their part of their survival mechanism, will still produce pollen for reproduction. They didn't produce nectar because it was so dry, but they still produced pollen. The bees were backfilling everything. We were actually pollen bound in many, many hives because there was nothing else to gather. It was just nothing but frame after frame of pollen. If you had a pollen trap in place at that point, you know, you can actually capture some of the highest quality, most nutritionally dense pollens in the fall time with those pollen traps. And what we do is that it does such a great job. We just pull the tray out of the back. And then if you just put a fan on, the pollen is so heavy, and just kind of shake it, like, you know, separating the wheat from the chaff or any other homestead seed flour thing that you've done, just shake it into a fan, the pollen drops, and then all of the debris, you know, kind of blows off with the fan. And then my wife will just put that into, you know, pint jars and put that in the freezer. And she tries to get me to eat that with some honey rather than like drinking monster drinks and, you know, things like that for energy. And it does work. My wife is right. She's always right.
Yeah, I tried the Apame pollen traps one time, and during the middle of our heavy, they were bringing in a bunch of pollen, and man, they just filled those things up so fast. But I didn't process it at all. The bee inspector here locally was collecting pollen, I think, for some kind of a study, and he didn't end up wanting or needing mine. But I tried it, and man, those pollen traps on the Apames work really well. Greg, I appreciate the super chat there. No paint, no rot, no hassle. Hashtag Under a Hive. Hashtag Be the Lighthouse. Hashtag Stream Team. Thanks so much, Greg, for your support. Let's see. Corey says, we kind of addressed this already. Should you check every 2 weeks? Thanks for a swarm cell. We kind of talked about inspections earlier. That is one thing to check on. And I do think, in a way, it's almost, as a new beekeeper, it might be a little more important to go in them a little more often. Maybe not. You don't want to be in them all the time, Laryssa, like you said, but just to check, just to learn the bees. As you mentioned, maybe spend more time in them, observe the frames, observe the outside of the hive, and just learn the bees. But as you become more experienced, you know, you can kind of tell when you need to go in and when you don't, so to speak. But it is important that you're not studying them in constantly all the time. I do agree with that.
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely. Actually, I mean, it's kind of the opposite when people first get their bees. They'll be like,
Sure.
I heard I shouldn't open them for a month. And I'm like,
Oh, yeah, they're scared. They're scared to open them. Yeah, yeah.
The best
sure.
time to learn your queen spotting skills is right now when your hive is 4 frames. Because
That's true. That's true.
You're not going to be finding her. Like right now, open it up every 7 days and go look in your beehive.
Well,
like,
people are scared too. People are afraid. They're scared. Well, I'm going to mess them up, or they're scared that they don't know what they're seeing, what they're going to see.
Yeah,
but you
but
have to learn.
That's their training. That's your training right there.
That's tuition. Yeah.
That first month and two when they are small, and you can kind of get away with a lot.
David Little says, learn to think like a bee. That brings a greater understanding. And that's kind of our goal, I think, in these inspections, especially, you know, when we're new, just kind of learning to think like they do, learning to anticipate what they're going to do next, and learning how to manage them and kind of utilize them to both your benefit and their benefit. That's really Greg mentioned, or years ago we had Bob Benny on here, and the name of the title of the videos on Greg's channel was The Art of Beekeeping. And it really is an art because everybody does it just a little bit differently. No way is necessary. Well, everybody, there are many right ways to do beekeeping. I was going to say there are no wrong ways. There probably are, but there's no particular way that is the only right way to go. Each person, it is an art because every artist is a little bit different and every beekeeper is a little bit different. But the only way you learn the bees and learn what your sweet spot is to actually get in the bees and manage them. This is kind of a piggyback on that. I said today, Mike Davis says that I learn something every time I go into my hives. And I still to this day believe that. That's one of the cool things about it, I think. I don't know if you guys would agree with me, is that one of the beauties of beekeeping is that, you never really know what to expect. And one of the frustrating things about beekeeping is you really don't ever know what to expect. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword there, in my opinion.
Yeah, one person was saying that she's finding it hard to find someone to shadow, and because she wanted some in-person help, and I think a lot of bee clubs kind of struggle to connect people, or even just for people to connect in person, which is so much more helpful than learning online. And I think part of the problem isn't that people don't want to help, but that they don't think that they are at the level that they can teach someone because they still feel like they haven't figured it out. But, for like people watching, if you can just let someone shadow you, which is literally someone not teaching them, but just letting them observe how you do things, it can be really helpful. And it is one of my goals at some point is to maybe make an app or something where beekeepers can connect in some way like that, because it is super helpful to have that in-person shadowing, and you don't have to like them or agree with how they keep bees, but just being able to shadow a lot of people is helpful. When I bought my nukes, the guy was like, he said he'd been keeping bees for like over 40 years. And he's like walking with this nuke with me. And he's like, people come to me for help because I'm been keeping bees longer than most of the people in the club. He's like, but I don't feel like I know what I'm doing. Yeah. I was like, well, if you don't think you know what you're doing after 40 years, then like, when is anyone ever going to feel like?
I think about just
what you're doing is like 3 or 5 years in, when you think you figured it all out right before you leave your yard. That's like when people, and then their like whole ego gets crushed once they have that.
Dunning-Kruger.
That's that curve. There's a curve, yeah. But I think all of us we've been doing this, pushing 4 years now, guys. We've been doing this stream team thing, and all of us have changed our, the way we do things since we started doing this bee chat. All of us, and we're continuously changing and modifying and moving forward. And that's just, and I know Laryssa, I'm sure you have too. It's just one of those things. If you can't change, if you're stuck in a rut, if you're going to do the same way every time, you're going to get crushed, because eventually, the beekeeping world is changing. The environment's changing. Everything is changing constantly. Some years are better than others, and some bees are better than others. And there are new pests that are introduced all the time. And you just always got to be adjusting. And as your goals adjust and as the environment adjusts, as the bees adjust, you have to be able to be adaptable. And if you get stuck in one rut, you're going to be in trouble. I think in the old days, there might've been a time when you could kind of stick bees in a box and manage them and collect the honey. I know you did have to always care for them, but it's so much more complicated now, I think, with all the difficult things that we deal with all the pests and things out there. A couple more comments, and then we'll kind of start to wind it down here. Just a comment here. Mark Basinger says, I waited too long to check on some distant hives. Live and learn in 3 hives. The 3 hives are half of what they were, reorganized and trying to move forward now. And that is true. If you just wait too long, you just don't know what you're going to find. You're going to have to just regroup. And in his case, Mark, we hope that you are able to save your bees. But, sometimes that happens to me. Life gets in the way sometimes. And before I'll go out and check them, and I'll just see problems that could have been averted and avoided. But with the number of colonies I have and all the things I'm trying to do, sometimes I can't get them as often or feed them as often or take care of them as well as I want to. But somehow, they tend to survive, most of them, and they make me look a lot better of a beekeeper than I actually am many times. I think I just have some really good, and it's a good area for bees down here. I believe they do well here. We got one more comment here from, let's see, MJ Habitat, Mike's OAV is the best. So clean. I don't have to wash out my Larabi's wand anymore. Yeah, I'm not sure if you use oxalic acid or oxalic acid vapor, Laryssa, but the Mike's, what's it called? Mike's.
It's on our website there. Mike's Easy Ox.
Mike's Easy Ox. Yeah, the oxalic acid that they sell, that is approved in the United States. It's definitely good stuff. We know Mike. Mike's a great guy. He's a veteran, and it's a quality product. And it's affordable. It's very affordable, and it's available on Greg's website, and you can get it directly from Mike or from Larabi's or many different places.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't use it much in Hawaii because nobody else shipped it to me.
Yeah, right. You can get it in Pennsylvania.
Wood bleach, and there's always brood present.
Yeah.
So it was. I never had to treat more often than once a year in Hawaii. So I, rotating out all the treatments. Yeah. I bought a vaporizer, but I only used it, I believe, once.
We got Highland Honey here for Bruce's towel fund, I guess, for my hive beetles. I'm gonna tell you, those towels, they come in boxes of 150, and so if you figure you tear them into 3 strips, you can get I mean, the box I have now, I think I've had for 2 or 3 years, and it's not even halfway empty. But I haven't treated all my colonies with it in a long time. I just kind of treat for beetles on a case-by-case basis. And so I used to go through and treat everything when I have issues everywhere, but the last few years I've only treated kind of case-by-case depending on the bee yards or the colonies that are in trouble. And so, but yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks so much for that super chat. We got Brian Lee. Our buddy Brian, nice hat. He says, Brian made these hats for me. He made me several. I need to get him to make me some more. They're kind of a hit with family and friends. It's got the logo. It's kind of hard to see, but it's got my logo on there, and I love them. I've got the kind of green colored and then some that are more of a gray color. And Brian's a great friend. He's from right here in Alabama, in Birmingham, about 3.5 hours away. Just a great guy, great friend of the program, and a great personal friend.
If he's still on here, when he makes some of those, he needs to do like a limited run of the bodacious hats.
That's an inside joke, Laryssa. Oh goodness gracious! They've been bugging me about that for years. They want me to make some kind of, what's it called? I don't know.
Bruce's bodacious body bars and something in Emporium.
Emporium.
Yeah, I think I told Brian if he wants to come up with something. If Brian wants to come up with it, we'll try, and that would be kind of a fun thing to do. But he hasn't come up with it yet, so it's on him to do that.
Well,
Brian, this is Brian Lee up in Birmingham.
Yeah, Brian's working on it right now.
Yeah, he probably is. Just a strong. Thanks for the feedback. He had a question. He's one of the questions we answered. He said about the frames, freezing them. He said it'll scrape off the brood and the bee bread. Yeah, and Justin, if you do that, you'll want to re-wax them, going into next year. If you have plastic foundation, if it's, like I say, foundationless like Laryssa uses, then obviously that's not the case. But anyway, Laryssa, we do appreciate you being on here. Typically when we close out the show, we like to kind of go around the horn and see kind of what everybody's got coming up in the future. So I guess we'll start with you, Laryssa. Tell us kind of if you have any final thoughts for us, and tell us what's coming up, on your channel, and if there's anything else you'd like us to know before we close out tonight.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was nice getting to know you and talking with you again, Bruce. Thanks for your insight on pollen traps and small hive beetles up here in the northern area. Right now, my goal is to just get through winter and learn as much as I can about it. I am a little bit more in the being a student now than the teacher. And I am going through like a complete overhaul of my beekeeping course. Now that I have a totally new environment to also film in. So I am in a little bit of the building stage. And I have 2 children in school now. It's so exciting. My 4-year-old has started preschool. Well, she will be in 2 weeks. My son just started first grade. So I actually am going to be a little bit more of a part-time person to make all these things, as opposed to as I have the time. So people can expect a little bit more of the regular every week videos going up, and more Pennsylvania scenery and cold and snow and all that fun stuff.
Good deal. And everybody go check out Laryssa's channel if you're not familiar with it, at Beekeeping Made Simple. She does a tremendous job. Larissa, I appreciate you coming on. I've just always been impressed with you come out tonight, you talk about a lot of things, but you're very humble, but you do a great job. I like the way that you just kind of attack issues. You'll talk about a situation you've seen, or a beekeeping issue, and you just explain it. You might be sitting in front of in a podcast style teaching, but then you have B-roll in there of what you're talking about, so people can see what you're talking about. You do diagrams. You do a lot of things to really help people understand. You really go back to the basics, and you explain it in a very good way from someone with like I said before, with the attitude or the mind of a teacher. And that's really, that's what your channel is all about, is helping people avoid, I think, complicating things and overdoing things and making life difficult. It's hard enough as it is. Why complicate it? I think it's kind of what I get from your channel. So we appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thanks.
Brian, what's going on? What about you? What's coming up the next few days for you up at Castle Hives?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, when Mother Nature decides to cooperate, I do plan on doing a deep dive into that hex hive. Laryssa, if you're not familiar,
I caught it on the tail end of that when I first joined.
There's a company out there that it's a 3D printed hive, and it's a hexagon shape, and there's 3 separate kind of chambers in each deep. Each chamber has 5 frames, and the volume of all of those frames, those 15 frames in that box, are equivalent to about 9.5 frames in a deep body. So I'm like a 3D printing person. I was involved in a 3D printing like business with another beekeeper buddy of mine. I like to tinker. I was asked if I would print one of these for someone else, and I said, "We'll get the files," and sure. So I made one for this other guy, and then I ended up making one for myself last year. I didn't have time to get bees into it though. One of the packages that I got this year, I installed into this hex hive, and it has, I can say 100% without a doubt, it has outperformed all of the other hives. And when I say outperformed, as far as when you're using 10 frame boxes, you're always having to manipulate frames in, out, to get them to draw out all of that comb. With the hex hive, I did not shift a single frame. They literally drew out edge to edge on every single frame, and there's 3 deeps on it. So they drew out, in their smaller frames, they drew out 45 of these small frames that would have been equivalent to 3 deeps. So, it's really impressive. So I'm going to do a dive into that. I just want to check and see what they've done. I want to see how they've stored their honey, where the pollen's located. I'm very curious about that setup. I'll probably do that here soon. And then other than that, I'm thinking in the next week, we're going to be getting into a little bit of a flow here. I was outside looking at, some of the signs out in the yard, and my little cluster of goldenrod by the wood pile that I kind of judge, it is so close. Those flowers are so close to popping. So I'm thinking within the next week, we'll have a little bit of a flow. I'll probably, though, with the colonies, it's just going to be check, the weight and get supers on them. That way they can store some of that nectar. Maybe I'll get a fall harvest. I don't know, but we'll see, but that's it. I definitely, though, and DC saying over there, I want the hex hive. Yeah. But I'll have that video coming out probably within a week. So super curious about that. So
Awesome.
that's it for here.
Down here in Alabama, I went to the Honey Hill Farm location where I have those 6 colonies where my biggest hive beetle problem is. That's what I did this past weekend. That's all I did this past weekend. The previous weekend, for several weeks before that, I was getting, doing splits, summer splits, checking on them, things like that. But all I did was that. And so I'm going to try to do a video addressing attacking the hive beetle problem. The interesting thing is when we put the Viroxan strips on in the first part of July, I hadn't checked on them since then. And the hive beetles were just almost out of control. There's the hex hive, Laryssa, if you saw that. See Brian there.
Yeah, that's
but the hive beetles were really pretty bad that day when we put those Viroxan strips in. But it had been probably 5, 6, maybe a little more since I've been in them. And those are the pictures of the towels I showed you, the little Dixie towels. But the hive beetles were much better this time. There were still some in there, but it wasn't to the extreme it had been. So one other product I forgot to mention is the Bye Bye Beetle product. It's the little traps you put in the bottom. It's kind of like the concept of the CD cases, but it's a bait in there with I think it's like pollen patty with some boric acid in it, and it's in a little section in the middle. So it's just a drop or two that they pre-fill it for you. And so I'm gonna try that out in there too. But anyway, this coming weekend we're gonna have kind of a fun time. We're gonna be hanging out with some family, maybe in another part of the country, for a couple of days. So I won't get them this weekend, but next weekend I'll need to just get in them and just see how everything looks. Got to clean up in some of the bee yards. I need to pull the treatments out then. And so that's where we're at here. Not a lot going on. I do have a video I'm working on. I didn't use my mic when I filmed the video, so it's kind of crazy.
I hate on it.
The bees were feisty, and I didn't use my mic, and so it's kind of the sound. I think I'm going to go ahead and produce it, but don't get mad at me if the sound isn't as good as it usually is. But anyway, that's what's going on here. It's just we're coming to this time where everything's kind of set up. I don't have any more splits planned this fall. It's just kind of let's manage them into winter, and then let's see if we can get through winter and into next spring. And that's kind of, I'm in that mode now of doing that. Greg, let's turn it on over to you, man.
Well, Laryssa, I want to thank you and your family for sharing your time with us tonight. Folks, if you're listening and checking in, make sure you go check out her YouTube channel, Beekeeping Made Simple, and show her some love there and thank her for spending some time here with the stream team fellas. What's coming up here at the farm? We've got a special guest coming, Brian or Bruce. I just gave it away. Brian, I just gave it away. I just gave it away. Gosh. Brian's coming down to the farm. Is going to be a guest speaker here at the Learning Yard this Saturday at 10 o'clock. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to meet right here in the shop. We'll do a full Q&A and kind of talk about where we're at in the season, what to look for, some points to consider. Then we'll take that information hands-on right here from the classroom, right out to the Learning Yard, apply it hands-on. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's 3 colonies. One of them seems to be eking out a lead over the other on how many supers it has, how much honey it's producing. And yes, it's a package. And spoiler alert, yes, you can even pull honey off a first-year package colony. We'll dig into that this weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun. Brian, looking forward to having you down here. I told you I'd buy you breakfast, and by breakfast, I mean all you can eat donuts and coffee. So spoiler alert on that. Other fun things coming down the pike, the West Virginia Bee Fair. I'm giving a talk, queen rearing the easy way, and we'll also have the Nature's Image Farm supply shop set up there as vendors. We'll also have the lights, camera, and action to be able to kind of meet with beekeepers and capture some content and share some stories, get that on video. And we're also really excited about, we're going to be setting up a Made in America honey extraction line, the likes of which have never been seen, Brian. So it's going to be awesome. It's going to be a Maxent setup so where folks can actually see what legitimate made in the USA equipment actually looks like. It's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to that. We got another conference coming up, and then it's full on conference season. I think one of the takeaways tonight, I think Laryssa did a really great job of, kind of describing what beekeeping means to her. But I think, the takeaway is, folks to spend more time with their bees. less time, kind of worrying over all the little tiny details, and spend more time in there with the bees. And you'll learn so much if you just spend the time and learn to tune in to what they're doing. Take the time to smell and feel and hear the seasons change, and it'll do wonders for you and your beekeeping. I get a lot of flack for saying this a lot of times, but I've got thick skin and broad shoulders. There is no mastering beekeeping. It doesn't matter how many master beekeeper pieces of paper you have, you will never master beekeeping. And I think it goes back to he who thinks he knows everything truly knows nothing. And I think that's what calls so many of us back to beekeeping year after year. There's something special, beautiful, and miraculous about these bugs in a box. What it is exactly, I don't think we ever can put our finger on it. And I think that's the beautiful thing, and that's what brings us back over and over and over again. Whether it's Hawaii, Pennsylvania, whether it's losing all of your bees, starting over, there's just something special about those bugs in a box. Next week, Wednesday, 8 p.m., we'll be on the Nature's Image Farm YouTube channel. Thanks for the reminder, Brian. It's going to be a lot of fun then, too. Again, thanks to Laryssa and her family for sharing her time with us tonight. We want to thank all of the stream team folks for showing her some support on her channel. And we want to thank you for spending time with us tonight. And until next time, we want to remind you to be the lighthouse and be the change you want to see in this world. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Laryssa.